Good morning, children. All right, so from that picture that I will have put at the beginning, you'll have your outline for what I'm about to say. So if you don't want to stick around for my wordiness, then you could probably get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about just from the picture at the front. If you, so when we're talking about rights, performance, duty, discipline, reward, complaints, and liability, what kind of factors should we be thinking about? Well, in modern discipline practice, and whether you look at all of the different departments and come to best practices, or whether you look at case law, what it's coming down to is what's called a disciplinary matrix. And within that matrix, we have two main pathways that we can consider things through. And we've got the distributive and the procedural pathway. So if we have an idea about how this works in reality, the fairness of outcomes is what we want to think about with distributive. And in procedural pathways of our workflow and our rights provisions, whether you're in a contract with someone to provide certain things, or whether you are acting on behalf of the government under color of law, if you are acting as an actual representative or administrator for the United States, the state of New Mexico, a city, etc. You have specific duties, and how do we consider how to do those duties in the best interests of, ultimately, of rights provision? Are we following the rules that were set forth in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America, our founding documents? Are we doing that or not? It's kind of that simple. So let me refresh your memory on this right here. And so this next section, if you want to freeze the frame or whatever, that's how I take the notes when I'm looking at this stuff. Okay, so veil piercing is important if you have an LLC. If you're limited liability corporation / company, people use the terms interchangeably, but your LLC is supposed to have a bond that is of a certain amount that's been determined by someone in loss control, that is kind of your worst case scenario if you have a misuse, if you have a negligence, or if you have an intentional criminal act done by one of your employees under color of law or under contract. So veil piercing is what the actual thing that we're talking about. That other stuff is just kind of like what's around it. All right, so you form an LLC. Why? You form it so that your personal finances, your personal, say, house, and all of that stuff is insulated from lawsuits done by this entity, the LLC. That's why you sign, when you form an LLC, you don't sign with your name exactly. You sign with by, you put the name of your LLC, the whole company, and then underneath you say by and then your name. And that shows that there's a separation between what you're doing with that business entity and what you're doing with your personal life. Okay? Now, the veil is pierced between those two. There's a man behind the curtain. Oz is a person, but the LLC is the wizard, right? So when the Wizard and Oz, when the veil is pierced, when Dorothy goes through there, lawyer Dorothy, is over there figuring the stuff out. Little Nancy Drew there figures out, with Detective Toto in tow, you've got them figuring out that, it's not a distinct business entity. The funds are commingled. Oz and the Wizard have the same bank account. They don't keep separate bank accounts. Adequate corporate records are maintained. Like, man, did you even have a founding document? Do you have white papers laying around about what you're going to be doing? Do you have anything, or did you just jump into this with no pre-thought? Because that's bad. So that's records are maintained in legal aspects too. It's not just like, did you just go in there and just think, okay, I'm going to do this job, but I don't know anything about it. So number 4 is the nature and form of the entity's ownership. Does it facilitate mixed use by the owner? So it's common. And it's a common veil-piercing strategy by those that wish to get to your personal property. So here's what it looks like in reality. Like, those are words, but this is what it means. Like, let's say you have a car that is supposed to be used exclusively by the business entity. It's a car, okay, and it's supposed to be used for that only. The owner instead also uses that car to roll his kids around town, to go to the grocery store, to go on out-of-town trips, come back, charge the gas to the contract holder, or those who are contracting, him or her. And so that's like just a common, easy, like, people need to be aware of those things, that the business use of business property is a common way to pierce the veil. Okay, so next. If you're thinly capitalized, that's really just a matter of, it's kind of like, how much should your bond be, and how much insurance should you be carrying, and then the other thing in a business that is super indicative of viability and ability to provide contract services in a competent manner that fulfills their duties, is that, do they have money in the bank, right? Like, there should be some operating funds. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just needs to be like a couple of months, 3 months of all of their energy bills, 3 months of, their employee expenses, blah, 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 all the things. And if they don't, that's probably going to be veil piercing. There's going to be some veil piercing due to mismanagement. Mismanagement is the other kind of wedge that's used to get into Oz's house, to get to Oz's personal bank account, when the Wizard can no longer fend off, the evil witch lawyer. So shareholders disregard legal responsibilities and duties, procedures, etc. It's pretty obvious, but don't violate people's rights. Don't break the statutes. Know what the statutes are. Know what people's rights are. If you employ people that have certain tools, they should be trained with those tools. A firearm is a tool of a security company. They should be trained to a standard, and there should be someone checking. There should be a discipline system in place. When you place somebody with the ability to take someone's life, the ultimate rights violation, you're paying them. You have a responsibility to make sure that they are able to do the job without bringing all of your business partners into a wrongful death lawsuit. That's why, right? What does a wrongful death lawsuit represent? It's a rights violation. Why do we care about that? Because the Constitution says we should. And that's what we found all of our corporate thought on is that birth from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That's why the rights matter. So, and funds of the business, this kind of goes along with number 4, the funds of the business used for non-business purposes. So you're going to have not just the physical assets being used now, but in this case, maybe they're using there's bank account, for Oz, and there's bank account for the wizard. And, the wizard should be keeping all his money separate and not using it to buy Oz stuff. If the wizard buys stuff for Oz, that's a commingling. See? So the only other thing is, if you look at just a common case that's already been adjudicated, both criminal and civil, we have Trayvon Martin being wrongfully killed by Zimmerman, Captain Zimmerman. The HOA felt that Captain Zimmerman was fine in his duties. They, mentioned him in the newsletters and whatnot, and he really, obviously, didn't have the adequate training to cope with someone just walking through the neighborhood. He didn't know how to de-escalate. He didn't know how to determine if someone was a threat or not. There was a lot of things that he did not have training in. And if you hand somebody a gun and say, protect this area, and you're the administrator for the collective of houses, you better know if that person is qualified, because you're giving someone license to sue everybody if they do a malfeasance, bad act, intentional act to prevent reporting of their other bad acts, etc. So think about how much was paid out in a typical Trayvon Martin wrongful death case by HOA agents, and also negligent maintenance of the like, where the young man got his skull crushed in but he didn't pass away and had lifelong medical needs, each house having to pay out $80,000 due to the administration negligence of their homeowners association. These are the things, that's the amounts of insurance and bond that you should be requiring of your contractors and to retain for your own administrative purposes.